Sometimes sad. There's some humor. Hopefully, you can come away with something that will help you knock down some of the prisons built up in your own mind. All right. Welcome back, Nightmare Success and our listeners. Wow, do I have a good guest today? And I know you guys come here for, what happens when your worst fear becomes your reality? How do you adapt? How do you survive? What do you do with all that? Once you survive, this guy survived so many times. I can't believe he's alive. I want to give a big shout out to Peter Meyerhoff. It was funny because I just told JC Almanza is my guest. And I just told him I'm kind of a groupie of his because I've been following his Wrong to Strong. He is the Wrong to Strong man. And such a unbelievable story. I mean, he's born into the streets of South Chicago, gangs and drugs. And he ends up at 17 years old in a Mexican prison, a Mexican cartel. He ends up into the federal prisons. And what he's been able to do with his life since he's gotten out, I mean, it's just a force for good. And I hope he shares his story about the shoes and how that story has gone in and become such a force of good for the kids. He's got 80,000 subscribers on YouTube. He's got over 54,000 followers on Instagram. I mean, he's a big deal. He was on this show, Locked Up Abroad. He's just an incredible story. I'm really excited to have him on. Before we get into that, I want to recognize our new sponsor, Auto Plaza Direct. Nobody likes going to a dealership and you spend a couple of weekends walking the lot and you finally find that car and then you spend like 4 to 5 hours in there to try to buy the car. It's kind of like going to the dentist. There's a better way to take away all that pain of getting a car. It's called Auto Plaza Direct. They're your personal car concierge. Just tell them the car you want, what you can pay, and they'll go find that car for you. They'll negotiate your best price with your options, and they'll deliver that car to you wherever you are. AutoPlazaDirect.com to get started with your personal car concierge. The new hassle-free way, the new car buying experience you deserve. Auto Plaza Direct. Tell them Brent from Nightmare Success sent you. Okay, folks, here we go. So, JC, so excited to have you, man. Welcome in.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for having me. It's always a blessing to be able to I guess share my story, just to give hope,
Well, and I think that's the very cool thing about your story and how open you are with it, how authentic you are with it, just the honesty, the vulnerability of how you tell your story. And it's just, you can't walk away with not feeling like, wow, this was real and inspiring. And, if this guy can do it from how, and let's talk about this because you were born into the streets, the hard streets of South Chicago, South Side Chicago. Can you tell us a little bit, JC, what life was like for you as a kid in those streets, in your home, mom, dad? Tell us a little bit about mom, dad, and siblings and what you had.
I mean, my younger years were really, really tough, really dark. My parents were really young when they had me and my two sisters. I have two sisters, and my dad ended up, getting into the gang life and living on the streets and just in trouble. And my mom had to move in with her brother, and he was.
And JC, if I remember right, when you say they were young, they were like 14 and 16 years old, right?
Yes. It was normal in Mexico to get married that young. My grandparents got married at 14. And there were kids having kids. So we got to the United States. We come from a small town in Mexico that there's money. It's pretty, hip, but my dad wasn't used to the United States and especially the drugs and all that stuff. So, he fell in love with that stuff and left us, and my mom had to fend for herself. And she didn't know English, had never worked. So she moved in with her brother, and I mean, he just had some serious issues. He raped, he raped me. He would drown me. It was a lot of
How old would
torture.
you have been like that time, JC?
It was from the age of 4 to 9,
Wow.
and
Wow.
you know, the things that I remember the most is the drowning and the dark room. He would lock me in for like hours. And as a kid, cold water as it was already scary
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
him, getting it ready to I already knew what he was gonna do to me, just really messed me up.
Did your
So
mom know anything about it?
huh?
Did your mom know anything about what was going on?
You know, it's a question that I know the answer to, but I've been afraid to ask.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
I get
I'm,
it.
I'm not gonna lie, I forgave my mom already, and it's history is done.
Yeah.
I don't blame her. Who knows what happened to her, So
Right.
I just made my peace with it. So,
So when you were that age and having to go through that, I mean, what goes through a 9-year-old's and 8-year-old's mind of this basically torture, fear, how are you dealing with that?
I now that I've been like more stable and I'm more
Yeah.
calm, because I used to be like a little Tasmanian devil, just too much energy, just running all over the place. Um, I think back now and I think about my memories as a child, and there's a very memory that I have of me and my little sister where we weren't allowed to have toys, we didn't have bikes, nothing. It was just kind of mental torture for kids, pretty much. I guess that's what he was like into. So
Hmm.
I stole the neighbor's bikes, one for my sister and one for me. And I remember that day like it was yesterday. We rode from the morning all the way to the night because like I just seeing my little sister so happy. I felt so tough. I felt like a grown up. I felt like a
Yeah.
man, and I knew what was gonna happen once we got back, but I was ready to deal with it just because of that moment. So it was tough, man, and my heart started turning into stone. I'm not gonna
Yeah.
lie. It just it by the time I was 9 and I was in Chicago, I wanted blood. I mean, I had already, started doing a lot of just bad stuff.
Hmm. So that how did I guess did it just transition pretty easily for you, JC? Because the crowd that you probably were running with, they were kind of into um, getting in trouble, being in things, and it was you were right there. Did that become? Did they become kind of like your family? Is that what is that? Was that kind of a security for you to fall into a group of people that were kind of helping take care of you?
You know, my family, especially my grandparents try to, remove me from the environment, and my uncle also, but I was already so damaged that they didn't even know what to do. They did studies on me, and psychiatrists and counselors, and I was just a mess. So on the streets, I felt normal hurting people. I felt
Hmm.
normal chasing people down, trying to shoot them. Like I felt, uh, I sometimes I feel scared to share how I felt because people will judge you, and then say, oh, well, you deserved to be in prison, and it sometimes I'll be like, you really don't know what that person has been through, so it's you can't really say that.
Yeah, I mean, it's so true. And especially after going through what you were going through as a kid, and how impressionable you are, trying to learn your way. And then, how did school and stuff fit into that world? Did you go, how did that work for you?
You know, you're hitting all you're good, brother, man. They didn't know how to teach me. They didn't know how to teach
Yeah,
me. I was always in trouble. You know, me and my wife talk about this all the time. I was so scared of getting called to read because I didn't know how to read. You know, I was so scared to go up to the board because I didn't know what was going on. You know,
hmm,
I had something was wrong with me. You know, I couldn't read, I couldn't write, and I became the class clown to get in trouble so I could get out of the class. So they
yeah,
just kept moving me up. It's fifth grade, sixth grade. Like
yeah.
I don't even remember passing any classes.
You
You
just
know,
went through it. They just kept pushing it forward.
yeah,
And you hear about that a lot, though. What I think is so fascinating about it too, JC, is reading. I've read so much about your life and what you went through, and you're such a smart, committed guy. You've built things and you haven't given up. I mean, the things that you've done since you've gotten out, it would have been very easy to say, hey, I just don't know how to do that. Or, I just, nobody taught me this. You made yourself learn, and you had a commitment to stick with it. And it's interesting because even though you were on the bad side of things, you had that leadership quality, and it was just kind of in the realm of the world that you knew. And it's as we go through this, it's interesting to see how that turns, that all those things that you used to create yourself to be the top of the chain, you used to, when you got out, to use that with that inner drive to build where you are today. I think it's really interesting. You're so when you get you, the interesting thing is too is that your world didn't, you know, on the streets there, you get in early, and your world gets kind of all kinds of crazy. But you're 17 when you first. Can you walk us through how that all happened? Because you were a young guy.
yeah. So 17 is when I was already I was already working. I started working going to Mexico at 16, and you know, it, I told the story before, but Valerie, later on, I guess we'll talk about her, but she was a big figure in my childhood because she was always trying to get me off the street, always trying to. I was just that kid, man, that was always on the street, always carrying the gun, always in trouble. I always tell people I believe that it was self-suicide. I was trying to commit suicide because that's how miserable I
Mm-hmm.
was, and how lost and I didn't fit in. And even being a bad guy, when I was at 100% bad guy, I still didn't feel like I fit in.
Isn't that wild? Yeah, you felt like an imposter to the bad guy world.
I felt like that wasn't me. It
Yeah.
wasn't. So yeah.
So, so how did you make that cross? Because you were in Southside Chicago. You end up down in Mexico. Was it from the people that you met in Chicago that had the connect to
Yeah,
to the
at the
to the?
time, we had just started a gang called. It's a really big gang. It's called the Satan Disciples. The
Mhm.
disciples of the devil. So we started a branch of them on 59th Street, and I was young. I was in my early years of my violence and everything. So it was about 12 of us, and we dominated the South Side, and we were just a bunch of crazy lost kids. Um, I met Valerie because she was the girlfriend to my gang leader. So out of the bunch, she would always try to help me out, give me little jobs, do this, do that. And when she made the connections to Mexico and everything, she offered me a job right away. And she was like, "Do you want to do it? This is your ticket off the streets, pretty much." And
Mhm.
that's how I looked at it, because I didn't see myself being like going to school, or I don't know. I always tell people I didn't I seen myself being like a big time drug dealer and like retiring with a restaurant and like living the party life for the rest of my life. That's kind of how I seen
Yeah.
myself back then. So I started doing it. I started making money, and it was a disaster. I mean, what 16-year-old kid is walking around with like 10 grand in his pocket? Like
Yeah,
it
yeah,
was,
no, I mean but it's also interesting that Valerie was somebody that believed in you, kind of picked you out of the crowd and must have seen something in you. And she plays a role in your life, throughout.
yeah, yeah.
So when the Mexico, how does it go down in Mexico? How do you get tangled in Mexico?
And
That's a nightmare of a thought to
it's
get.
I always tell people, it's bad down there. It's bad, and what you see, it's even worse. It's bad. And I always say, I tell people that I was lucky that I was young, and in my mind, I was in my prime of like violence. I was able to be able to take it, because like if you were to send me there now, oh, they would eat me alive. I would not make it. I would not make it a day.
Well, I'm wondering though, JC, like what was going when you got arrested in Mexico and you knew you were going to go down in prison in Mexico, what was going through your mind?
I was pretty calm, actually. I was, thinking that they were gonna get me out. I had my hopes really
Yeah.
really high, and I kind of felt like it was gonna be a tap, on the wrist, and they were gonna let me out because of who I worked for, and everything went completely, left field.
And I know when you walk in that first day, what happens?
It's like I'll never forget the big black door, the way it slammed, and just me walking in, and just trying to, I guess, find my way. I wasn't terrified until I got stabbed. Once I
Yeah.
got stabbed, then I got a little terrified. But
And that happened right when you walked in, right?
yeah, I mean, I was there for about maybe 10 minutes, 5 minutes, something like that, but I walked in pretty much I knew how to walk into places with my game face on.
Yeah.
So, and I tell people that, people that haven't been to prison really don't know how to do that. Like, you have to look a certain way, you have to walk a certain way. Everything has to match with how you look.
Mhm.
I call it camouflage.
Yeah.
So, and then I got stabbed, and I knew something bad was gonna happen, because they look at us as like traitors. They don't take us in like you're Mexican. No, like
Mhm.
you're born in the United States. You got it made. Like you don't suffer like us. So
Mhm.
they look at us like as traitors. So I knew something was gonna happen. I mean, and after that, it was every day, every day. I was lucky that I had there was another a guy there. He was an American, and his name was Ricardo, and he knew how to box. And he was my best friend, my like ride or die, and we were always together. And since I was always using drugs, he was always watching my back.
Yeah.
And he's a really good friend to this day, man. And I owe that guy some of the 38 lives that that
The
I've
38 lives that you've
lost
lived.
that I've lost along the way.
So I've never had anybody on, that went to a Mexican prison, has been in a federal prison. I can only imagine because watching different things on TV, it just looks like, first of all, federal prison is not a good place to be, but Mexican prison looks like absolute hell.
Well, I tell people, when you go to an American prison, they give you what you need. When you go to a Mexican prison, you gotta fend for yourself.
Yeah.
So it's just how it is. It's not backed up by money or none of that stuff. If you have family there, they'll take you food. So
Mhm.
you get those baskets delivered to you every day. But If you don't, then you buy food. There's restaurants in there. And if you go to chow, it's gonna be like really bad. Like,
Mhm.
yeah.
Well, I think you were talking about in one of your talks that they, it's not like everybody gets fed. They just drop off food to a wing of the prison and you kind of fend for yourself.
Well, they're so overpopulated that, once the food comes in, the line just gets long, with people's cups and because it's pretty basic. In the morning, it's watered down oatmeal with a hard piece of bread. And for lunch, it's rice and beans and some tortillas. And for dinner, it's the same thing again, the bread and the oatmeal. So it's a pretty basic diet, but if you don't make it, you don't make it. It's just, it's so overpopulated.
Wow. And you ended up, JC, doing 4 years there in the Mexican prison. So was that what you were sentenced to, or were you able to transfer out and go to the United States?
No, I got sentenced to 15 years in Mexico, but I put in for a transfer for the United States to pick me up. At the time, they were extraditing Mexicans for Americans. They were doing exchanges at the time, and I was able to get on the program. And I waited, but it took forever, man. And everything just went crashing down for me. When I got there, I was like the man. I established my turf. I was working for the man. I pretty much did whatever I wanted. Lots of drugs, lots of women, and I just started getting more and more into trouble because my ego, my head started getting big, and I beat up the wrong person. Then I started using too many drugs, and it started a whole chain of events that almost cost me my life a couple of times. It was by God's grace that I made it out of there. I mean, to tell you the truth, man. They once they moved me to that unit where I really was told not to even leave, if I wanted to, get out to the United States, I was, I'm not gonna lie, I was in constant fear because they could come and get me anytime. And I seen how they lynch people over there. Like it's not cool. Like I rather be on the south side of Chicago and just get shot, and that's it. I don't want to get lynched by 7, 8 people, 20 people.
Right.
So
Yeah, I mean, I can't even imagine the fear of that, and the bad characters, but I think it's kind of interesting though, because when you came in, and I know you talk about the Florida transition to go into the Florida prison, and along the way you're talking about that somehow, some way you're wanting to make a change, somehow, some way, is there a way to make this happen? Can you kind of walk us through that, your mindset at that time, what you're thinking after you've gone through so many of these different steps through the prison world, the streets of the South Side Chicago? Where are you at in your head?
well, before Florida, I had spent almost a year in solitary, and it
That's
really
a
did
long
something
time.
to me. It did something to me where I kept thinking about. Yeah, I always tell a lot of the people that I know, I always tell them, go in your bathroom, put some books in there, put the food that you're gonna eat, close the door, and
And
sit
stay there.
there for 24 hours. Just sit there. Don't leave. You can't leave. No, sit there, and you'll realize who you have to deal with. And
Yeah, I mean,
find,
did you feel like you were going crazy, JC? Because I can't imagine. I had a guy on here, let's see, a couple of podcasts ago that was had been in solitary for 3 years, and I can't imagine. What were your strategies of dealing with that on a daily basis?
at first, I was coping with it, just kind of getting through the days. I want to say I probably went through a stage of depression where I was just sleeping a lot, uh, getting up just to eat, then laying down again, and just like that. But then that doesn't work no more. So then you start, pacing, you start going a little crazy. So then you start to incorporate workouts.
Mhm.
After you incorporate workouts, then you clean the cell from top to bottom where you can pretty much eat off the floor, off the toilet.
Yeah.
And it just becomes like a routine that you just do every day to the T.
Yeah.
And I got to the point where I was doing that, but then that wasn't working no more. So I always tell people that the librarian guy used to pass by, he really never had nothing good. And I was
No
losing
good
my mind.
books.
I
Yeah.
was losing my mind that day. And I don't like to read like novels. I don't know. Like I'm
Yeah.
not into them. And he had a book, but it was about the Bible. And I started reading it, and it started giving me some peace. And I was like,
Mm.
wow. And I just thought it was like a normal book. I didn't even know it was a book of the Bible. I didn't find out until later,
Mhm.
And it started giving me some peace, man. And the whole solitary story is like a huge story. I don't know if you've ever heard that story, but it changed me because they ended up putting me in with one of the Mongols. It's a motorcycle gang. They
Mhm.
put me in there with him, and I got to learn that there was individuals like me that were not educated, didn't know how to read, didn't know how to write, didn't know a lot of things that I guess you could say normal people do know, educated people do know. I hate to say it like that.
Mhm.
And that relationship with him really started making me think about, man, like I think I could change. I think I could be a different person, because to this moment, all I knew was selling drugs. I mean, all I knew was uh making a quick buck.
Mhm.
I didn't care about the law. I did whatever I wanted. So it really started changing me. So when I was on that bus to Florida, I was really praying, because I was like, man, I don't know how to pray, but I hope there's no gang members there when I get there, because I don't want to be, affiliated. I don't want to be on the yard. I
Yeah.
just don't want to catch more time, because that's what
Mhm.
happens. You get more time and more time and more time.
Mhm.
A lot of people that haven't done time on higher security yards don't know the difference, because they've been to camps or low security where really nothing happens.
Right.
So, and these yards, stuff happens. And sometimes, even if you don't want to, you have to jump. You have to do stuff, because if not, your own people take you out. Your own people stab you up. So it's like, it's a crazy world, man. I got there and there was a lot of gang members.
A lot of gang members. I was gonna say, how'd that work
A
out?
lot.
Yeah.
From everywhere.
And the thing of it is, there's a good side to that too, because those guys also help you get set up. There's nothing good about traveling as a prisoner. You got your stuff, you get set up, and then they move you and you get moved to another place. But the good side of that, being affiliated and all those things, is those guys help you out. They
Yeah,
welcome you in. They make, because that's your life. You're going to live there. It's your
yeah,
home. So that's the kind of the golden handcuffs of the deal is, they're going to help you. And I know when you got to Florida, they gave you a big bag of care package. It was like, hey, JC, man, welcome. And
yeah.
you were like, man, I don't know. I was just saying I wanted to do this.
Yeah, it changes you, because then you experience the camaraderie again. You feel welcome. You feel loved. So it's hard sometimes to give up that life when it's all because I mean it was my family. It was who I broke bread with. And in prison, you eat with them, you shower with them, you work out with them. So it is a 24/7 relationship that you have with these guys. So you
Yeah.
build really strong bonds with them.
Well, and you did that. But I think the thing that changed you, as you were already changing in your mind, was I think you were getting the opportunity to get into was it the RDEP program?
I got into the RDEP
Yeah.
program, and I
Which I
went
had to
into
probably explain that because you and I know RDAP because we were in RDAP, but the RDAP program is the one thing in prison that you can get a year off for. It's rational thinking, it's behavioral thinking. Actually, I think it's a really good thing if people teach it properly because, you know, it probably should be taught in high school or, you know, wherever, because it's not a bad thing for people to think about why they think the way they think and
yeah.
maybe catch themselves doing something, thinking something before they act. But you get into that program and can you kind of lead us through, because you don't just naturally just cut away from, hey, I'm with this group that I'm affiliated with, and oh, by the way, guys, I'm not going to be with you anymore. It doesn't quite work that way
No,
that easily.
I mean, I always say God's been in my life. Like my guardian angel must have like broken wings arthritis because somebody's always had my back. You know, when you're in prison, you're not supposed to get out of your gang while you're in prison. You know, you wait
Right,
till you get out.
right, right.
And sometimes I make decisions without thinking. I make decisions just out of my heart, you know, and I sat there and I was like, you know what? I don't wanna meet, I don't wanna gangbang. I wanna do this RDAP program. I want those 9 months of you know, living, you know, because they kick you out if they see you throwing up gang signs and stuff like
Yeah,
that. So you're it's almost like they set you up to fail because they put you on a yard with a bunch of gang members, but you're not
yeah,
supposed to be affiliated.
right.
Everybody's affiliated. So um I tell the leader and he's like, well, you know what's gonna happen. And I was like, well, yeah, I mean, I guess. I thought you would understand.
Well, you kind of gave him your life story. You know, it was a hard story to hear. I mean, and then he said, "Well, you know what's going to happen." I mean, you give him your heart and soul down to, you know, what's going through your mind, and he says, "Yeah, okay. Well, anyway, here's what's going to happen." So you go back to
There's,
your cell.
there's a lot of people with cold hearts in there, you know. So I go
Yeah,
back to my cell and you know, I pick up my knife and I'm like, man, like, you know, the ego kicked in me and I was like, well, if they're gonna try and get me off the yard, I'm gonna, you know, I'm gonna take a couple with me then, you know, and it's just gonna have to be like that. But just something in my heart, man. I tell people that that seed was already there, that I just didn't
mhm,
want to be in prison no more. Like I felt like I had a purpose, but I just didn't know what it was yet.
yeah,
And I opened up the Bible and I read Psalms 51 and I put it down and I went to work. I was working in the kitchen and I was making the ground beef and one of the Blackstones came running up to me and it's you know, a gang from Chicago that they pretty much ride with us. They're with the Land Kings. So he comes and tells me, he's like, hey, they got all the Land Kings and they're, you know, they're escorting them out. And I was like, stop it. And you know, I ran out to the window and yeah, sure enough, they had been under investigation, I guess, prior to me getting there for like cell phones. The guard was helping them bring it in. It was this big thing, man. It was, I
mhm,
think, the warden's daughter that was a CEO there. It was big.
wow,
And they were under a federal indictment. And they were taking them all out. And I was counting them and I was like, well, there goes that one. There goes that one. And I was like, man, they took all the head guys.
wow,
So, you know, when I got out the next day on the yard, I was like, I'm gonna do some sweet time now. I'm gonna
mhm,
pretty much do whatever I want. And there was a couple Land Kings left there, but they were more kicked back, and we still had to do certain things to preserve our table, to, you know, on the yard, our spot. There were still things that I needed to do, but they knew that I wasn't on no gangbanging stuff. And I'm not gonna lie, in Florida, I mean, I was like the only race that could really sit on anybody's table. Everybody just the bloods, the whites, everybody shook my hand. I just carried myself
Mhm.
different on that yard.
It's interesting. It didn't happen a lot. It's
No,
very segregated, very primitive society.
yeah, especially with the white dudes. The white dudes were my favorite because they just Johnny Haynes. I remember his name. He was from the South, and he was just. I just had never been around people like that before, and it was like almost, I guess, funny, but at the same time, it made me feel good because I could win these people over, and they actually like loved me. They respected me.
Well, and I think that's why you have been able to do what you've done since you've gotten out. I mean, you've put all kinds of people together. How, I know that, going back into the yard like that after you've been, you know, kind of the mind change. Did you feel like your time was different? That you were doing time different?
Yeah, I started doing time different because I started trying to educate myself. I spent a lot of time in education. I think I got about 30 certificates.
Yeah,
Every from
so they
typing
call
to,
programming. Yeah.
yeah, to everything. I became hungry for knowledge. I became
Hmm.
hungry. I discovered that I wasn't as dumb as had everybody had
Yeah.
told me, but I had to teach myself. So that's what I did. I pretty much taught myself how to read. I mean, I barely get through it, but I get through it. I'm very hard headed, so I'll do it over
Hmm.
and over again. And just that's just how I learned.
So, JC, did you have any connection to the outside, like family, girlfriends, brothers, or your sisters? Anybody that you were connecting to from the outside while you were in?
Not really, man. That makes me a little
So-
emotional when I talk about it.
Yeah. Well, it's hard to do time. I saw a lot of guys that I was with that they didn't have, they lost everything and then they lost their family. And I always say I was so lucky because I didn't. I had a great wife that, she basically put a cape on and be, a superhero type person, keeping everything together. But I always thought, the guys that did their time, that they were just doing their time and didn't have any connection. Because I almost felt like when I had visits, it was almost like I got to straddle the fence, from the outside world to the visit. I mean, it was always so painful. The only thing was, it's so painful when the visit's over because, then you're back into the prison world. But as you got closer to the door, knowing that you're going to get out, what was going through your mind?
I mean, at the beginning, when I was younger, when I was like coming in and out of state prison and stuff like that, my first thing on my mind was, the neighborhood, what I was gonna do to make money, stuff like that, and my gang. And as I got older, when I got out of the feds, I mean, I did the same thing. I went back straight back to my gang. When I moved out here to Arizona, I I I guess you could say I joined another gang because I got into a motorcycle, little crew, and
Mm-hmm.
I started doing the same thing I was doing in Chicago, just in a different city.
Mm-hmm.
But I really was, I guess you could say, all over the place, man. I mean, I never really had a family because the world that I mingled with, it doesn't roll like that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I used to hate guys like you. The ones that got the
Exactly.
visits, the ones that got the
Yeah.
money.
Yeah.
I used to, even when I was on that RDAP yard, they had, sex offenders there. And
Mm-hmm.
they were getting visits, they were getting money. And it used to just hit me really hard, man. I had a lot of hate in my heart.
Mm-hmm. So, JC, because it felt like to me when I've gone through different scenarios with your story that you somewhat hit rock bottom when you're in that year solitary and you kind of come to like, I can, and start to kind of believe. But when do you think that the true transformation happens So that you become wrong to strong, that you become this force for good. What happened?
So I was on the bus going to back to prison on my violation. And this is after I got out for the first time, and I was out for a couple of years. So it made me kind of fall in love with the streets. Before I didn't care. I was right back in my environment.
Right.
So they put me on a bus and they sent us to Victorville. And in Victorville, they have, you know, 2 mediums and a high security. And when I say high, is, you know, cement walls, 20 feet, whatever, like just really big.
Yeah.
And in my head, I'm sitting on the bus. So they stop on the first prison. Prisoners get off, and I'm like, okay, so I'll probably go on the second one. You know, prisoners come off, second one. And there's only 3 of us left on the bus, and we pull up to Victorville to the USP. And I looked at the guys and I was like, wow, they're sending us behind the wall.
Mm-hmm.
And the guys, one of the guys, you know, he's still my homie to this day. He's like, oh, I've been here. He's like, it's bad.
It's not good.
And I was like, you know, you could have waited to tell me that, like, once we got in, you know. And in the gate, everything was so like breathtaking. Just the door, the gate opening, the wall. I mean, it really impacts you like crazy.
Yeah.
And once we got in, I mean, we were there for maybe an hour, 2 hours. We were going to get fed, and somebody was already getting stabbed for a piece of chicken. Like there was blood all over the walls, handprints. And I'm sitting there eating, and I'm like, you know, what am I doing here again? Like, you know, I'm like 40 years old. It's like I'm an old man now, and I say that because of everything that I've been through, you know, like just everything.
A lot. Yeah.
If it wouldn't have been for that guard that seen my tattoo on my leg and just made some phone calls and just, you know, another angel, I call it, you know, he got me out of there, and they ended up transferring me to Lompoc. And Lompoc is a low. I had never been to a low in my life, never. And when I got there, I always tell people I had never seen so many white dudes in prison, and they were all there for white collar crimes. You know what I mean? There was a lot of like bank crimes. There was a lot of just, you know, different kind of crimes. There was a couple of rough heads around, but not too many. And the yard looked completely different. They had a weight pile, they had basketball courts, they had a lot of stuff that when I got there, I was like, man, I could do like 20 years here. You know, it was like, it had a lot of amenities.
Yeah.
So I felt different when I went to that yard, because I felt, I guess you could say, a little bit smart. I felt like maybe I could actually pull this off. And I started writing a lot. I still have my notebooks.
I saw your notebook on one of your you actually turn the pages where you've got your stuff. I think that's, it goes, I think it's on your, is it on your website?
Yeah, it's on it's one of my videos, because I did everything that I said I was gonna do on my books.
That's what I think so cool. Yeah.
And
I think that's what I get when I started following you. I thought, man, I love that. Anybody who writes stuff down like that and then follows through, that's just, that in itself is inspiring.
You know, and I started with small things, you know, getting my license because I didn't have one, and just all the bad stuff that had turned my whole life into like chaos. I started fixing that, you know, get just everything. And it felt so good once everything was taken care of, because I felt like I had an identity. I wasn't, you know, K67 119.
Yeah.
You know, so it was pretty cool, man.
So this is your, you know, you're a 40-year-old guy. You're starting to feel like, hey, you know, I'm, because I was kind of an OG when I went in. I was 47. So, you know, you feel there is a lot of young guys, but So is that where it happened for you, JC?
Yeah,
Is that what that was the world where the change really started
yeah.
hitting the
I
field?
have 100 names on this notebook of names that I was thinking about that I wanted to
Yeah,
name. Like, back then I was just kind of thinking that was gonna be just fitness. I didn't really think it was gonna be what it is now.
yeah,
And one day I was just walking the yard with a couple of my boys. A lot of my friends thought I was a couple, but I was a little crazy because I used to I used to walk around with the big boots, my cut off
yeah,
jogging pants, and just a really big sweater all the
yeah.
time. And I used to jog in them and walk around, and they just thought I was like a mental patient, but
Well,
in
those
my
boots
head.
aren't good. If those are the issued boots, those are terrible.
So, in my head, I was dreaming. And that's one thing I try to explain to people. Like, as a kid, I didn't get to have toys. I didn't get to have none of that stuff. So I played with a lot of cardboards. I played with looking at newspaper ads of the toys and playing with them in my head. Like
Mhm.
that's how I played. So I guess you could say I've used that to my advantage now that I'm
Yeah, it's
older.
your imagination, sure.
Yeah, so I have
Yeah.
my imagination. So I would walk around for hours on the yard and just come up with names and video ideas and what I was gonna do and just everything. I once you get me going, it's like you gotta like turn me out.
Well, it's just it's fascinating because you live such a and for those who want to check it out, go to JC's both his website and to his YouTube channel because there's so much content there that's just so incredible. But I told you this before we got started. It's incredible that you survived, but what's so incredible is that you survived and figured out how to put the puzzle together. And then you started once you got out, and it wasn't easy. I mean, you and I were talking about that the other day. It wasn't easy. You've got 80,000 some odd subscribers on YouTube, but at one point you said you had like 50, and you're like, well, I don't know if this is going to work, but you didn't give up on it.
No, I one thing I am is hard headed, and I'll figure it out. I pretty
You got
much.
it. You got it. I mean, I think one of the this is kind of an emotional story, but you have such a way to tell stories. But the shoe story, can you walk us through how that came for you personally and what you then turned full circle 180 back around to the kids?
uh, Um, well, it was I want to say the early '90s, and everybody was buying those expensive gym shoes like Jordans, Bo Jacksons, and these were back then $120 shoes, but you back then it was probably like $400, so it was very expensive. And my dad really didn't care about what kind of shoes he got me. So I was always wearing kind of plastic shoes, Jordashes,
Hmm.
Payless shoes.
Yeah.
And it affected me so much because like I tried to play basketball. I tried to play a lot of sports. A lot of people don't know that. Like I played a lot of sports, boxing, all kinds of stuff, but I always got made fun of because of my shoes.
Mm.
They would rip on the side and my dad wouldn't buy them, so I would have to wear them like that. So
Kids to make fun.
it just didn't feel good. So I I was very young. I want to say I was in seventh grade. And I had
Yeah.
older gang member friends that were always giving me weed, always just giving me stuff. And since I wasn't using or anything, I would just save it up. I would put it in my drawer, save it up. And I learned how to I started selling drugs.
Mhm.
And I started, just doing it, and I bought myself the Bo Jacksons, and I remember cutting grass and thinking, man, this is gonna take me a year to be able to save up
Mhm.
when I could do it this way. So, I would always measure, I guess you could say, that the good and the bad, but I
Mhm.
always chose the bad because it was faster. And
Easier.
you know, I got my shoes, and I'll never forget, man. They were black, the silver like linings that made the X. Like it completely changed that first day of school that
Mhm.
year, where I felt like I was the man.
Yeah.
And you know, now I try to do that for the kids, because I'll have shoe runs. Um, because I believe that every kid on the first day of school needs to have new shoes. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, who doesn't get hyped up about the first day of school?
Right.
You know, and you know, I'm a strong believer in that, man. And there's a lot of things that I try to do now that it's about the kids, or youth, or men my age, because men my age, you know, it took us a long time to even. I always tell people I'm still a kid trapped in a grown man's body.
Yeah.
Like I'm a kid. Like this is why I laugh so much. This is why I have such a sense of humor. You know, it's stuff that made me not go crazy after everything that I've been through. Like it was like me entertaining myself.
Yeah.
You know?
How did you work this whole fitness thing in? Because there's some powerful stories on people. I remember the one guy that was talking that, he didn't know what to think of you, and he had, um, he was in a bad way, and you did a lot of research and figured out what he needed, and it really changed his life. But he said, once he realized that you were really trying to help him in the best way you could, and you were, he was struggling, and now, he's a totally different person. What how did you push all that together, JC, to make, wrong to strong, your fitness? I mean, for those who will see this on YouTube, you'll see that JC's not a little man. He, he's pretty well fit. He can lift quite a bit. I think he holds some records for lifting a lot of weight.
Well, I've been working out since I was 9 years old. There's always been weights in my house. My dad was a gym rat, and
Hmm.
that's how he got all his girlfriends at the gym. So
Hmm.
we were always at the gym working out. And when I came home, you know, I wanted a career in something that I made my own schedule. I made my own like money, everything. I controlled everything because I don't like to have bosses. So I said, okay, I'm going to be a trainer. I'm going to be the
Hmm.
best trainer in Arizona.
And you
And
knew a lot about it too, right? I mean, that there's a passion.
yeah, so I
Yeah.
got
Yep.
out, and I started doing it. I started winning clients over because my knowledge was like just it was. I don't know the big words. I just know the science behind the body. I just know what to tell you
What
to
works.
do, and we get
Yeah.
it done.
Yeah.
And the results were just back to back, where everybody started to get to know who I was. And a year later, I opened up my own gym, but I ended up back in prison. So it's like it's a crazy story. It's like you got 10 hours to tell you the whole.
But the people that and I know that you ended up back and forth, but each time that you end up back and forth, you've changed, and you become a better version of what you want your change to be. And I think that's why it's so interesting, we're talking here today, because each time you went back, you came out, and now you're out, and I can't see you going back.
No.
It's one of those things where you totally have transformed. You've totally made the transition of, doing what you're doing fuels you up now. And you know how you I guess the other thing that's I find interesting is that you used your passion of knowing how to keep the body fit and how to build and become what you should be, a better version of yourself. But really, in a sense, and I hear these people talk about you, you've kind of become their life coach. Yeah, they're getting in shape and they're feeling better, but in a sense too, you are more of that. You're more of a life coach to them.
I've built a relationship with my clients because I've learned that, you know, everybody has a story, everybody's been through something, and I've learned more from them than they've had from me. Actually, they've been my good teachers, and even uh how the way that I speak, everything they've been like my teachers, and I train like 50 and over. Like,
Thank God
all my
somebody does it.
clients are elders,
Yeah.
and it made me want to do my job better. So I started researching, man. I would come home and watch a YouTube video about fitness, a YouTube video about editing, a YouTube video about pictures, thumbnails. And I was just on a schedule. I would just come home, come home, come home. And I knew it was going to take me longer than a person that could, you know, go to school or actually read a book and learn. But I knew that one day my hard work was going to pay off. So I just kept doing it, doing it, doing it, and Wrong to Strong just kept changing. It went from a fitness brand to a supplement brand to uh,
It's
back to
really a lifestyle
fitness.
brand.
It
Yeah.
just it evolved to so many things, you know.
I think it means a lot to people on Wrong to Strong because everybody has something wrong that they, it's relative in their own life, whatever went wrong, it could have been a bad childhood, it could have been a divorce, could have been somebody's death. There's so many things that could have gone to prison, but Wrong to Strong really, I think, means something to everybody. And I think that's why what you're doing is really, and I think that's why you have so many followers. Your message is you can make it. Your message is that regardless of where you've been, you can still get over the hurdle and you can still become the person you want to become. And that's what I think is so powerful about what you're doing, JC, is you are using, and this is what this podcast is about. Nightmare Success is about, you don't get success without walking through your fears and your nightmares. You've got to knock that or go under it, around it, whatever. But you got to step into it. And it's not fun to step into because you got to step out of your comfort zone. And I think that's what your secret sauce is. I think that's why I was drawn to you, over a year ago, is that first of all, your story is so impactful, but you continually show that you can do it. And that's what people like. People like a good comeback, and people like to think, you know what? Look at JC. He's making it happen. Maybe I can get off the couch here and not sit on the side. Because I always tell people, JC, you don't want to be the guy sitting on, your rocking chair on the porch at 85 years old and say, I wish I could have gotten into the game. And, that's what your story's about. You got on the field, might have not been perfect, but you're playing the game and you're making the plays. And I think that's what people like about what you're doing. And, I think Wrong to Strong is a perfect brand for you to, God knows what you're going to do with it. You'll probably be a movie star.
I'm taking a theater class.
I know, you told me.
Community college, and I did a couple of acting things, and I'm a dreamer. I've been a dreamer since I was a kid, and I just feel that when you set your mind to do stuff and you discipline yourself, you could accomplish anything you want. Like it's just, I tell people I've only been out for 5 years. And,
Yeah.
and a lot of people are like, get out of here. And I'm like, yeah, but man, I came out and I hit the ground running. Like, yeah. I made some of the same mistakes I had made in my life, but it's because I didn't know better. I was still kind of learning. So I had to maneuver. But my big, honestly, my big change came when I met my wife, and she introduced me to my faith, and it just started changing my life even more. My discipline just added on to that, and everything started to change. Everything started to fall in place. I'm a firm believer that God is using me for a purpose, and I'm just staying on course, doing what I have to do. And one of those big things is me of being of service, helping people, you know, change and just guiding them. I just hold the flashlight. They got to do the work. You know, that's it.
Well, I guess, yeah, I always ask people this on the show is that, what do you think's your biggest takeaway through everything? I mean, you've lived one hell of a journey. I mean, for those people listening out there, what do you think's your biggest takeaway through all this?
Man, bro, I cry every day. There's not a day that I don't cry because I'm so grateful of what my life is today because of everything that I've been with. Look, I'll start crying right
You're
now.
kind of making me emotional. I don't know what you're gonna say.
And it's just because I'm just so grateful of my wife, my house, my life, my friends, you, Peter, just everything, the way that who I'm surrounding myself with. I'm so blessed, man, and I just want to keep helping people, man, because if I feel like this, everybody should feel this way.
Yeah, man, that's good stuff. And you know, it's, and I guess that's the thing, that out of all this stuff, you could have gone in such a dark path for the rest of your life, JC, and you just, you didn't. You know, you made another turn, and it was the right turn on the fork in the road. And I really think that's the secret to your success. And I think, you know, your personal life, getting that to have a foundation and feel like you've got that to, you know, grab onto. I think that's also a big piece of that. To get to you, I know you can just Google you. I mean, you got tons of stuff on Google. Wrong to Strong is your website. Wrong to Strong on your YouTube. That's the, I mean, there's so many great things on your YouTube channel. Subscribe. Anything else I didn't ask you, JC? I leave anything out?
I mean, man, it's been a crazy ride. It's people are like, well, how many years this, how many years that? And I'm like, man, if I knew, it would be a big, like, it would solve the whole puzzle. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? Because my life was so, you know, so like just like a pinball machine, just back and forth and in and out of prison, violence, just murder. And that's why I tell people, that's why I'm so grateful, because I didn't know peace could be like this joyful, this it could feel this way, and having a partner to like be able to enjoy that with, and man,
yeah.
it's changed my life so much, and I want to just keep helping people, man, feel the way that I feel. That's all.
And you know, you could be so bitter, you know, of being, you know, a kid that was more or less tortured and went through all the things you'd never want a child to go through, and then go into that other dark world, and you're not bitter, and it just exudes out of you, your gratitude, your gratefulness. And you know, I think that's why people, you know, people want to be around that. And I, you know, so impressed with your success and so happy for your success, JC. You've done great. For those out there who are still looking for a book and you didn't buy it at Christmas, there's a Nightmare Success, the one I wrote. Check it out on Amazon. You can get it at Barnes and Noble. You can actually get it at Walmart too. If it's great to go to either, you know, Apple, you can follow the show, go to Spotify, you can hit the bell. Leave me a review on Apple, because it helps promote the show through. Love the reviews. BrentCassidy.com. Leave me a message. I love to go back and forth. In fact, I had somebody come on the other day and they gave me an idea. So love all that. As I used to say when I was at Leavenworth, writing my emails back and forth to the people on the outside, stay strong, and I'll do the same to Mr. Wrong and Strong. JC, man, thank you so much today.
Thank you for having me, bro.